You've been gaslit into believing antidepressants and ADHD meds are harmless. The truth, their unpublicized risks include suicide, violence, and overdiagnosis. We are your whistleblowing shrinks, Dr. Tara Lynn and therapist Jen, and this is the Gaslit Truth Podcast. Today we have a special guest, Katinka Blackford Newman. Katinka is the author of the best-selling book, The Pill That Steals Lives. Her memoir, which shines a light on the dangers of psychiatric drugs and how she was gaslit by the medical community. She also writes for national newspapers on the risks of mental health medication, is the founder of the not-for-profit Antidepressant Risks, is a life coach, and the host of the Med-Free Mental Fitness podcast. Please welcome Katina to the show.
Katinka.
I'm sorry, Katinka.
It's all right. You
This
just
is the
got a
second time I've done
consonant.
this intro, and I've just messed it up twice. And yeah, so
That's okay.
I'm so sorry.
It's a struggle. This struggle is real this
I'm on
morning.
the struggle bus this morning. Anyway, back to you, Katinka. Yes. All right. So let's just get this started with your story. So if you want to begin from the beginning, we'll just start from there.
So my story began in 2012. I was working as a documentary filmmaker, and my marriage had recently fallen apart. I coped very well. I was the poster woman for how to cope with a failed marriage. I did everything. I was training for a half marathon. I expanded my friendship group. I was taking lots of exercise. I started dating again. Everything was fine. I was coping really well. And then something happened that just took the rug from under my feet. And that was that I'd assumed that my ex-husband would let me stay in the marital home, beautiful Victorian home, and I promised my children, who are aged 10 and 12, that we would stay there. And to my surprise, and upset, my ex then announced that we were going to have to sell the house. I was very upset, and I couldn't sleep. I had some sleeping tablets for jet lag. I took those. I still couldn't sleep. I could not bring myself to tell the children that I was going to break my promise to them, that we were going to have to sell the family home. And so then I went to a doctor for more sleeping tablets. And he said that he couldn't give me sleeping tablets, but he could give me an antidepressant. And I think he sort of persuaded me that I was depressed somehow. And I remember thinking at the time, that's odd, because I wasn't depressed last week. I was really happy last week. So there's only just kind of like something that has kind of happened this week that has suddenly made me depressed. So I didn't really quite agree with it, but I didn't really care either, because he was going to give me a pill that was going to make me sleep. So that was all I really cared about. So little did I know that I was one of the small minority of people that had a really, really severe adverse reaction to antidepressants. At least one in 100 by drug company data. We know now that it's much higher,
Right.
according to unpublished trials.
Right.
So anyway, I took, even just after one dose, I started losing my cognitive abilities. I started having this quite agonizing condition called akathisia, which in Greek means literally inability to sit still. I was very, very restless, which meant that I couldn't sleep, but somehow I still had been persuaded that I should still continue to take them. I took a second dose, possibly a third, and at that point, my mind went into a psychosis, a terrifying psychosis. I think this is also after 2 nights of not sleeping as well. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I was hallucinating. I thought I'd killed my children. I remember running to the park, thinking that I'd killed the children, but it didn't kind of make sense because they were there. And then suddenly I thought I was being filmed, and I was on this game show. And the game show was that everybody was voting on who was going to be the better parent, my ex or me. And the whole world was voting for him, and which meant that I was going to lose the children. I mean, it was just terrifying. Amidst all of this, I remember being in physical agony as well in that psychosis. So I think the akathisia was still playing out in all of this. And I remember taking a knife and stabbing myself, at which point, again, I thought I'd stab the children. It was all very confused. My children then were terrified because their mother had gone mad, and they called in my ex and my sister. They took me to a private hospital where I was sedated. It was a Saturday night, late on a Saturday night. I was sedated, admitted, and the next morning I woke up and I was still psychotic. I thought that there were cameras in the ceiling, but somehow I knew that I shouldn't take the antidepressant, so when I'd gone in, my sister said, oh, she's very ill, she's on this medication, etc. So when the nurses came around, here's your citalopram. That was the somehow I knew that had made me ill. At the time I was hallucinating that it had poisoned me or something. So anyway, I didn't take that. So I think they gave me benzodiazepines or whatever, but I didn't take that. However, when the psychiatrist came and interviewed me, I said to him, look, there's a suicide pact with God and I need to kill myself so that my ex can have the children, right? So that was kind of like quite damning evidence as far as they were concerned that I really was a danger to myself. But anyway, the next day, which was the 2 days after being admitted, I woke up and I was okay because the citalopram had worn off. I was shocked. I didn't really know what had happened. I sort of knew that a drug must have caused it. Rationally, I thought it couldn't have been the citalopram. That's a prescription drug. So the only way I could make sense of it was I thought, God, has somebody actually spiked my drink with acid? Was what I was thinking. Anyway, I said to the psychiatrist, look, I'm fine now. I'm going home. Can I go home? And he's like, are you kidding? Of course you can't go home. Yesterday you said there was a suicide pact with God. You came in, you had, you stabbed yourself. We're gonna keep you in. We're gonna detain you. All of that would have been fine. I was now in an expensive hospital. They came around with a sort of timetable of yoga and Pilates and therapy, and the food was great. It would have all been fine if they just said, look, drink lots of water, have some therapy, etc., etc. Of course, that isn't what happened. They said, look, we need to give you medication. So, of course, if you react badly to one of these SSRIs or a drug that works on your serotonin system, it's highly likely that you're going to react badly to all of them. So immediately they gave me the next antidepressant. I started having akathisia.
I just want to intervene for a second. So they did recognize that this was because of this antidepressant?
They completely did not. No. They absolutely didn't know. They literally said, no, you have got psychotic depression.
Okay.
And also they said, and it doesn't really matter. They said it doesn't, because I kept on saying, no, I think it was the citalopram. Then, or somebody's spiked my drink with acid. They were like, we don't really care. It doesn't really matter. We're detaining you anyway, because whatever caused it, you were a danger to yourself. Mm-hmm. If I'm being cynical, I might also think it's a private hospital and I was being covered by private insurance, by my ex's private insurance. If I'm being cynical, I might be thinking it was probably quite beneficial for them to keep me in.
Yeah, probably.
Quite beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
So the private insurance, basically, it covered me for the next 6 weeks. Wow. Effectively, as soon as I started taking that next antidepressant, I started getting akathisia. I didn't go into a psychosis. I started getting akathisia. That also meant that when I was doing the therapy or whatever, I couldn't sit still. So they were like, she's not getting any better. She's getting worse. She's so anxious. She can't even sit in group therapy and talk to people. And also I couldn't really talk. I couldn't really make any sense at all. They were also then adding in antipsychotics at the same time. They were also, every time I got anxious, they were throwing in a few benzodiazepines, etc., etc. So I remember being in absolute agony at that time, which was akathisia. I didn't recognize it at the time. I knew it was the drugs. I just completely knew it was. But I didn't have any choice. I was there and I was being poisoned. And I could not get them to listen to me. So after a few weeks, and I remember as well, so my kids would visit. I remember the doctor, the psychiatrist, sitting them down and saying, your mother, she's got a chemical imbalance and we're making her better. All right. All of that bullshit was going on
100%
at the
bullshit.
time.
Mhm.
Yep.
Anyway, so at the end of those 4 weeks, I just about managed, which, by the way, coincidentally, I think was 4 to 6 weeks was when the first lot of private insurance runs out. Then you have to go away and then come back, kind of thing. So at the end of that time, I was let out. By then, I was an addict.
Yep.
Not in the way that some viewers might think. In a kind of, it wasn't like I was craving the drugs, but I knew, and I knew it was the drugs that was causing this. But when I skipped a dose, because I was trying to get off it, it got even worse. The akathisia got agony. And so I was frightened to not take the drugs for that reason. And also because I was frightened because then I was at home with the kids, with my ex-husband who'd moved in. And I was frightened that if I didn't take the drugs, that then they would readmit me to the hospital.
Yes.
Weaponize.
So I was in this kind of like catch-22 situation. But anyway, I had to keep going back as a day patient. They kept on giving me more and more. I got iller and iller. They kept on giving me more and more drugs. There was a turning point when they gave me the antipsychotic olanzapine. And at that point, I became catatonic. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't wash myself. I was dribbling. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go out the house because I would lose things. I wouldn't remember to close the front door. I couldn't walk down the street. I certainly couldn't have a conversation. And at that point, I started trying to medicate myself, self-medicate with alcohol, cigarettes. So before I'd been a keep fit fanatic, and am now actually. So I'd been training for a half marathon.
Yep.
Never, almost a teetotaler. Suddenly I was smoking 70 cigarettes a day, and I was drinking whiskey because I was trying to do anything to counteract the effects of this cocktail of drugs that I was being given. And of course, these drugs, we know they work on the dopamine receptors. So I was, that's why I was smoking as well. The drugs as well make you rapaciously hungry. So I ate so much, I could not stop eating. So I put on half of my body weight again. So I became 12 stone instead of 8 stone in a matter of months. So I was unrecognizable to my children. To everybody. I mean, I couldn't have a conversation. I couldn't watch a television program. I couldn't work. All I could do was eat and smoke and drink alcohol. In that time, I was in and out of that hospital with various different diagnoses. Oh, right, we've got it now. You're bipolar, right? Let's put you on lithium. Oh, I know, it's treatment-resistant depression. Oh, we've worked it out now. We're going to give you a little bit, more risperidone, and then we're going to take down the Prozac, and we're going to add the sertraline, and then we're going to do that. All of this.
All because you couldn't sleep.
Because I couldn't. It started with me not being able to sleep. Yeah, it started.
Yeah.
That's how it started.
Mhm.
And they diagnosed depression, which, well, I mean, was I depressed? I was really pissed off. That's
Well,
an
you said
English way.
you said
I
it
was
you were
really upset.
for like
I
a
was
week.
really anxious
Yeah.
that we were going to have to lose the family
The house.
home. But I
Right.
wasn't, it wasn't like I was clinically depressed and had kind of,
Right.
and hadn't been out the house. And,
Right.
I didn't have,
This was
I wasn't.
situational. This was
It
a,
was situational. I didn't have
huge
any
situational
existential
stressor.
despair. If somebody had said, "Oh, you can keep the house," I'd be like, "Hooray!" That's
Well,
it.
or even
End
if
of
they said
problem.
you can't keep the house, eventually you'd be like, all right, all right,
Yeah,
this was
exactly.
horrible, but, we get to a place of
Exactly.
acceptance, right?
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
horrible in the beginning, and I'm like, "Man, this polypharmacy happened because you couldn't sleep because you had horrible news about losing your home that you didn't wanna lose for your kids." To me, that makes sense.
Mm,
To me, I would be like, "Yeah, I probably wouldn't be able to sleep either. That would be horrible," right? Like,
mm,
to me, all of this makes sense. That doesn't need medication. It needs to make sense, right? It needs some validation why you're feeling that way. It needs maybe some sleep hygiene. It doesn't need 6 weeks inpatient,
Oh,
polypharmacy.
maybe let
Uh,
somebody work through what is a natural emotional state that's occurring
yes,
and let them work through it.
right.
yeah, completely. I mean, totally.
Like,
Yeah.
nobody looked at
Totally.
you before. Like, nobody looked at you before and said, "Oh, look at her. She's doing great, going through a divorce, doing well, exercising, eating right,
Yeah,
all these
like,
things." And
the
then
idea of depression too, right? Like, how you had said, it's almost like I was kind of convinced that maybe I had a little depression in here, right? So,
Mm.
I think, do you recall why it is that he couldn't prescribe you, something for specifically for sleep?
Well, I think he said, "Oh, I can give you one sleeping pill,"
Okay. Okay. Because
kind of thing.
part of that intrigues me right there a little bit because he had to almost create something that was going on for you,
Mm,
which he used your circumstance in life, I'm sure, happening.
to
Oh,
be
you're going
prescribed
through
that
a
antidepressant.
divorce. Yes, you're losing your house, right?
Mhm.
He had to create a story to be able to prescribe that medication to you, even though you came in really saying, listen, I can't sleep and I've got some shitty news that just happened. And that's literally what's going on. But my
yeah,
lifestyle is great. I'm the epitome of exercise and nutrition. Yeah, I'm getting divorced, but I feel good. It's not taking me down. But so he had to create a story almost for you to be able to then prescribe that medication for you,
yeah.
just to
I,
justify it.
to justify it, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose looking back, what was missing was the fact that this was so kind of like temporary.
Yeah,
Right.
It was like I hadn't been depressed the week before.
Right.
right.
So
It's
how
just
come I
like,
was suddenly
By the
depressed
way,
now?
I'm gonna say this, if you
Yeah.
were to do a screener, even in
Mm.
an office, a depression screener, the week after, like, last week you were fine, this week you got the news and you couldn't sleep. If you were to do a screener, it says, "In the last 2 weeks."
yeah.
Well, last week, no, I was fine.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
has this been going on for at least 2 weeks? No, it was 1 week. Not even
It
a
was
week.
1 week.
Like, yeah, right.
It was 1 week. And
Yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. It was 1 week. I mean, what he could have picked up on was the fact that it was true. I was really anxious.
Yeah.
Sure.
I was really upset.
I could
I
see
was.
why. I
Mhm.
mean, would if you were to look at a friend and they're like, "Yeah, all this happened in this sequence up to, like, I'm losing my house that I really wanted to stay in for my kids, and I feel anxious and I can't sleep." You'd look at that friend and go, "Yeah, probably same." Like, I would probably feel the exact same way. Like, that feels like a logical thing to feel, right? Like, that feels
Yeah.
appropriate. That feels like something typical that somebody might feel after they got news like that, right? Like,
Mm.
it doesn't feel like pathology is what I'm saying. It doesn't
Right.
feel pathological. It feels
Right.
normal. Mhm. Like a
Yes, it
normal
does
lived
feel normal.
experience and a normal response. Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, I don't know what pathological is, to be perfectly honest. I'm not sure that there's
Diagnostic, being able to diagnose something, make
No,
the
I know what you
clinical,
mean, but
making it clinical. Yeah.
I'm not completely on board with the fact that there's ever a great justification for
Mhm.
for prescribing these pills because of what I know
Mhm.
now, which is that they're
Right.
not hugely effective.
No.
They are effective in emotionally numbing people, and that
Mhm.
might be helpful in some instances. I don't think if the drugs had have worked for me, and they didn't, I was one of the minority that have a acute reaction. But if they'd
Yep.
worked for me and they'd emotionally numbed me, I'm not sure how helpful that would have been in terms of coping with a house, losing my
Well,
house.
Right.
I would have been like,
and
right,
I
okay.
think you said something right when you started this story, Katinka. One dose, okay, one dose of an SSRI led
Mm,
you to some akathisia and even some psychosis, right? Now, can we add in the fact that you hadn't been sleeping? Sure. Like that's a
mm,
confounding variable that matters, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
can add all kinds of confounding variables
Mm,
in,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
how you're hardwired, your medical history, right? The toxins in the air, the nutrition
All of
you have.
that. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
all the things, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
if we just remove this idea, one dose, so you changed
yeah.
one thing in your life. We have so many people that argue that idea with us,
Mm,
and that it's not possible that you can take one or two or three doses of some kind of medication and that you have
mm,
that reaction. I
mm,
think that when this happens to people, and I know that you're saying you're kind of part of like that small population of people that have such an acute reaction. What I think is probably even me just like anecdotally saying, I think that there are a lot more people out there that have that type of reaction. But when they make that very first phone call to their prescriber and say, I'm overly anxious all of a sudden, or I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin, or I can't stop moving, the response that they get is, you got to take it a little bit longer. You haven't given it enough time. Or see, that is your depression and it's popping through. You've got symptoms popping through. And so instead of people thinking it's that one dose, they're going back to thinking it's me. And I've
mm.
got an underlying mental health condition that's popping now for me. And this is what's causing it. So I think that the statistics on this, right, are more so from people that it's probably super low. I think a lot of people can have 1, 2, 3 doses of just take it for a little bit, and this is what happens. But they don't blame it on the med. They don't connect it to the med, right? They're told by a prescriber, no, it's this underlying depression, Katinka. Like
Yeah, totally.
seriously, like here it is, it's popping. We've got to keep going. We got to keep medicating. You got to take this longer. And that skews our results. That skews how people report things. When
Yeah, I
really
mean, totally,
it's the med,
totally. This is
you
this
know?
is entirely my experience because fast forward now, I write about this um, for newspapers, and I have a not-for-profit antidepressant risk. So I'm contacted by people all the time to whom this happens. I wrote recently about somebody who took an antidepressant for neuropathic pain, right? So no history of, she didn't go. It wasn't. You could never argue that this is for depression. She had pain in her teeth caused by a facial that went wrong. It was neuropathic pain. She ended up jumping off a building because of akathisia to try and end her
Mhm.
life.
Yep.
She
Yeah.
Yeah,
jumped off of it. She survived,
mhm.
but that happened. But I've had countless calls from people. Oh, and they obviously have realised it. But of course, then there are people that take their lives, aren't there? And their relatives don't realise that it was a medication-induced suicide.
Well, this is that idea that if we only view something as treatment, we never view it as a drug. So if we're only viewing this is helpful, we can never see the other side of the harm.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what this is. And this whole conversation is also making me think about our young people who are being massively diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I'm thinking that this is also as a result of putting them on antidepressants, and then they have mania. They go manic
Yeah,
from the
totally.
antidepressant.
Well, that's what
And so
happened to me. Yeah.
the conversation around that is that, oh, well, it's just triggered off bipolar disorder that was underlying the whole time, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, or the medication caused you to have mania, like because you shouldn't have been taking it. So
Yeah.
all of this stuff just makes me wonder about overdiagnosing bipolar disorder or psychosis or, all of these
All of those
things.
things. Yeah. I mean, that
Yep.
was in
Mhm.
entirely the narrative that was given to me. Oh, you must be bipolar because
Yep.
or you must
Right.
have treatment resistant depression.
Right.
Well, first it was psychotic depression, then it was bipolar, then it was, then
All the
it was
things. All the
everything.
things.
Everything.
Yeah.
Never once was it, oh, it was the drug
You know,
Right.
that caused this.
I think as a mom too, when you were telling your story, I am imagining myself being in an inpatient facility and having some kind of in the background thinking, I'm going to lose my kids
Mhm.
if I don't do this. Right? Like if I don't follow through with these protocols and try to do everything that I can, I'm going to lose my kids. Or I'm not gonna like, and I don't know if that was part of like things that you were feeling throughout
Oh,
this too, right? Like if I
oh, yeah,
can't get the hell out of here and
yeah,
follow what they're telling me to do, like that to me is so fucking scary.
yeah. I mean, it
But you
really
knew what the
was.
problem was, but you can't
Yeah.
not, you know what I mean? Can you speak to that?
I mean, it was horrific because I knew the truth and I knew that I was being poisoned. There was no way that I could not take the drugs because they were watching over me. And also, after not very long, as I say, I was dependent on the drugs. I mean, not in a good way, but
Yep.
I wouldn't have been able to hide the fact that even if I'd been able to, that I'd come off the drugs because I would have gone into a kind of like a sort of a fit. And, and this happened throughout the course of the year that if I skipped a dose,
Yep.
I would go from feeling awful, really awful to kind of like to be absolutely almost kind of like
Mhm.
if you've seen those videos of people that have got intense akathisia, that's what it would have been. That it would have been, I would have been hot, literally have gone to A&E probably.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. So yes, it was terrifying. It was like I just didn't know which way to turn.
And you were
There was, and
damned if
then
you did, you were damned if you
damned
didn't,
if I
like,
didn't,
either
and
way.
also there was
Mhm.
there was some weird mind fuck thing going on where at some point the site there was in their notes they're like, well, there's they do these questionnaires, and if you say that the medication is making you worse, that's a sign that
Yes.
that you're ill.
That you're
So
ill.
Yeah,
it's
that you're
like,
ill, you're in
yeah,
denial of your illness, or
exactly,
yes, it is
exactly,
weaponized against you. Or if you were to say,
absolutely.
"I think these meds are poisoning me," just the word poisoning, "She's
Yeah. She's
psychotic." That's
psychotic.
She's
psychotic,
Yeah.
psychotic
yeah.
again. She's
She's
mad.
Mhm.
psychotic again. There
Yep.
is I use the words mindfuckery all the time with my clients in my therapy practice, and it's kind of like the icebreaker and everyone laughs. But then when we break down what that actually is and how these words are used against us, how diagnoses are used against us, how the history that we have is weaponized against us, that's really honestly what's happening.
Yeah, totally.
So
I mean,
I think, it's all mindfuckery.
it is my
There's
fault. It was like
yeah.
being in some kind of like weird film. It really was. It was. I just remember being trapped in
Mhm.
this system, and also just knowing that these drugs were making it impossible for me to function as a human being, and
Yeah.
I could tell that they were draining my ability to care. And
Yeah.
particularly, there were very frightening moments for me with the children where I was like, I don't know why this is, but if my children were to run out in front of a car, I'll be like,
Yeah.
whatevs.
Mhm.
I would not
Mhm.
be able to react.
Yep.
Right.
And
Mm.
Yeah.
actually, my kids are now 22 and 23. I think they have some trauma around that, because there were times when my daughter would have panic attacks in order to try and get my attention. She could not get my attention
Yeah.
because my emotion I was so emotionally numb that I couldn't respond at all.
Mhm. Yeah.
How long did all of that go on for you?
It was exactly a year. So my book was going to be called The Year My Life Was Stolen, but I think there are lots of books that are called that. They didn't want that as a title.
They want
There's a
that.
lot of people that have a
We're
year
like,
of
no,
their
no.
life stolen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, forget that. We want something better than that.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Okay. So it took about a year. So when
It
you
took exactly a year, and
okay,
it
you're
was by the way that I got out of this being gaslit was kind of like pretty extraordinary. Do you want to hear it?
we want to hear it.
Yes. Yes. Please.
Okay, so After a year, so then my ex had moved back into the house to look after me and the children. It became too much to see the despair in my children's eyes with me there. So I somehow managed to get myself out, and I literally went to the estate agent, put down a deposit for a rental flat, and then I was living on my own in this rental flat, right? Smoking and drinking and just in the most terrible state. And when the akathisia flared up for the final time, I was literally pacing round the London streets at 2 a.m. And then I'd pick up some, vodka or whatever to try and get myself to sleep, because I guess the antipsychotics had not, that were taking off the edge of the akathisia, had stopped working. So this was at the end of the year, right? And so then for the final time, I'd been in and out of that private hospital. For the final time, I rang a family member in despair. I said, I don't know what to do. I just help me. He said, do you want to go back to hospital? I was like, I'll do anything. So I go back to the private hospital and I'm put on suicide watch. I'm so ill, I can't get out of bed. And at that point, I'm psychotic again. It's in my notes. She started, hallucinating, taking off weird stuff. Anyway, so then the psychiatrist comes in and he says, we're going to discharge you. And I was like, really? And he goes, the insurance has run out.
Oh my God.
You spent £50,000 of your insurance and it's run out. And so I'm afraid that
suddenly we don't care. We don't care that you're suicidal or psychotic. Like, back to the streets you go.
You were
Streets
being
of London.
cynical before about like the cost of being there. No, I don't. I think this is not cynicism. This is reality. Carry on.
So anyway, so then I'm discharged back to the community, into the community care of, of the state system. So I'm back in my flat, in my little flat. My children cry if they visit me. They won't have anything to do with me. I have community workers that come in to make sure that I'm taking my medication. The place is a wreck. I can't do anything. I can't function. I'm just an alcoholic. I'm shaking. I'm smoking, etc. And so, trigger warning. I'm going to talk about suicide now. So I decided then that I was going to end my life. That's what I decided. I'd lost everything. I'd lost my children. I hadn't lost my work. I hadn't been able to watch a television program or anything. At this point as well, I have tardive dyskinesia. It's in my notes. You know what that is? That's brain damage. So I'm dribbling and it's the beginning of brain damage. I'm thinking, what's the point? So I plan to take my life that day. I'm going to, we're not allowed to talk about how we're going to do it. But anyway, it involves going to a train station. I don't do it anyway, so maybe we can talk about it, right?
We can talk
So
about
anyway,
it.
you can edit this bit out.
This is real, and this is your story, but other people's space too, because they will be sitting on the other end listening to this going, yep, been there.
So that was the decision that I made. Okay. But then something stopped me, which is that I looked in the mirror and my face was all sort of puffed up. And I saw myself as a 12-year-old child, and my daughter Lily, she was 12 at the time. I lost my dad to suicide when I was 12 years old. Looking back, part of the journey I went on in the book was, he'd also been on antidepressants. The inability to tolerate medication is genetic. Or very interesting. I didn't know that at the time, but all that I thought was, my God, I was 12 and I lost my dad. If I take my life now, my daughter Lily, she's 12, she will think that there is something wrong with her. Her mother didn't love her. She won't be thinking, oh, the drugs. She will think that it will scar her life forever. And so something made me say to the community worker who came in to give me my pills, I said to her, listen, I'm really, really ill. You need to take me to hospital. And she said, in what way ill? I said, I'm actually, I want to take my life. I'm that ill. So anyway, she took me to the nearest state hospital.
Oh, your insurance ran out. That's why.
Because my insurance ran out. Yeah, exactly. Sweet. And I remember I had akathisia so badly that I couldn't sit still in the car, and I was like this, and I was dribbling, and I was just in a terrible state. And anyway, I said at the interview with the psychiatrist who I said the words I knew would get me sectioned, that would get me interned there. I said, I'm going to kill myself. I knew that he doesn't have any choice then,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was really annoyed because he didn't have enough beds. So he was like, you really going to kill yourself? I was like, yes, I'm really going to kill myself.
Are you sure about that?
I'm
sure about that?
absolutely sure, 100% certain. And so he was really annoyed. So suddenly I was in this state hospital, which was quite unlike the nice, private hospital. It was really scary, really, really scary. And I didn't have a bed. And they took the most unusual step of, they said, we're going to take you off all the drugs that you're on, and then we're going to start again.
Oh, you got med washed.
Yeah.
So basically, they cold turkeyed me off. I was on 7 drugs at the time. They cold turkeyed me off these drugs.
Oh my God.
Ooh.
Okay.
So I can't even begin to explain what that was like. It was like I couldn't walk some of the time. I was screaming and screaming in agony. They didn't realize it was the drugs. They had no training whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I think they also thought that it was because they knew that I'd been drinking. So I think they might have thought, oh, she's detoxing from the alcohol or whatever, or or she's just mad or whatever. But they were literally just threatening me. If you carry on like this, we're going to just be, detain you. We're going to put you in whatever it's called. What is it called when the
like observation or
when you're isolation or whatever.
Oh,
Sure.
isolation, sure, yeah.
I'm
So
doing
anyway,
prison.
I basically
prison
I know we're-
speak now.
screamed. I screamed for 4 weeks. 4 weeks. I screamed and screamed. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. I tore my skin apart.
Yeah.
I was, ringing people up. You've got to get me out of here. I'm going to kill this is awful, awful, awful. And then suddenly something miraculous happened, which is that I woke up, and I swear to God, I promise you, this is the case. I woke up and I was better.
Oh, I believe it.
Completely
I
better.
believe it because of the origination story.
Yep.
Right? Like you were fine, and then you took a pill and you were so not fine. So it makes sense to me that you would actually wake up one day and be okay. Like that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I woke up and I looked in the mirror. I was like, what the hell has happened? My face was swollen. I was like, what has happened in the last year? I used to be this successful filmmaker. I've now ended up in a mental hospital. My ex has got the kids. Everybody thinks that I'm mad. What the hell am I going to do? So and I remember ringing my sister at the time, and it was the first time I'd managed to actually just string a normal sentence together. And I said, look, it's my birthday on Saturday. I said, I think they're going to let me out if I ask them. Can you arrange a party at something to celebrate my birthday? She was like, what's going on? She's not talked any sense for the last year. What's going on?
Yeah.
But she did. She got all of the family at a restaurant, and they let me out for the whole day. And in my book, which I'll come to, that was I say so. My daughter Lily was driven to pick me up. It was the first time she'd been allowed to see me in that bit because I had been so ill at the state hospital. And we went shopping together. And what I write about in my book is that I say that was the day that I met my daughter again after a year. And I was like, my God, I missed the fact that she's wearing a bra for the first time. I missed her first periods.
Mm-hmm.
I missed all of that. But we went shopping, and suddenly I was better. And I can't begin to describe what being better is like when you have been drugged. That suddenly your nervous system is normal. You can have a conversation. You can function.
Mm-hmm.
I could buy clothes. I wasn't shaking. All of those things. And then I went on and had dinner with my family, and my son came along looking like, here we go, mad mother. And by the end he recognized the fact that I was better. And I remember him coming over to me, and for the last few months, he just said, I hate you, I want you out of the house. And he came over and he hugged me. And I remember crying for the first time in a year, because of course the drugs numb you. I hadn't been able to cry. And I remember crying, and I was like, my God, this is what it's like to be human. This is normal. This is what we do as humans, isn't it? We cry. So anyway, I was better. I went back to the hospital. I was like, Christ, God, terrified that they were going to drug me again. But they didn't. They relaxed the section. I said, look, I'm better now. I don't want any more drugs. I think they gave me some low dose of venlafaxine or whatever, which I just chucked down the loo.
Yeah.
And they relaxed the section. They let me be there for six weeks, coming and going kind of thing. And I was very grateful in a sense, because the place that had become a prison, it became a sanctuary, because I was fragile at that time. I was really fragile because I was getting back all of my emotions for the first time in a year. So I remember the first time listening to a piece of music, I was like kind of crying with joy. The first time I was able to read a book, the first time I was, I started going running again. They let me out, so I was able to go running. I went ice skating, all of these things. I remember being able to, talk to people. So from that place, I reorganized my life. I got a job, I got a house, all of those sorts of things. But the most important thing that happened to me was that I Googled side effects, antidepressants. I was like, right. And I came across probably a familiar name to you, Professor David Healy, who's written about this. And I rang him up and I said, I was a journalist once, but is it possible that these drugs could have caused me to want to kill, could have caused all of this? He said, you're lucky you didn't kill yourself or your children or both. He said, I've been a witness in cases where this has been the case. And so I'm a journalist. As a journalist, I was like, okay, this is a really, really important story. I'm going to just put that to the side. I've got to get my kids back. I've got to get a house, etc., etc. But this is really, what he's telling me is really important. And so then I became obsessed with this. I started looking at the drug trials, the stuff that that, when they tested Prozac, the people took their lives on the trial, but they didn't show up in the data. Other stuff, which is that just a few years after Prozac came out, there were just, hundreds of lawsuits against Prozac. I met a man who you may be familiar with called David Carmichael, who had taken Seroxat and had gone into a psychosis, taken his son's life. I researched stories around the world where judges had ruled that antidepressants had caused people to kill. So I wrote all of this up into a book that was then sold to a current affairs program called Panorama, who made a film called A Prescription for Murder, which investigated the link between antidepressants and violence. And then I set up, with David Healy, I set up Antidepressant Risks. It was his idea that we wanted people to have a voice, so that somewhere they could post their story of antidepressant harm, or people who they'd lost to antidepressants. And that has grown phenomenally now. And so we offer support groups, and we do a Stolen Lives picnic, and so on and so forth. We have lots of volunteers. We've got a big library of antidepressant films, virtual library, and so on and so forth. And then I trained to be a life coach.
Because why not? Why not? I love it.
Well,
I love it.
your lived experience is what it's about. Really, truly, when you look at the ability to truly do coaching with someone, because you can sit with them in it. You can understand it.
Yeah, I have a quick question though. So when you got off of, they took you off, we call it being med washed. So they washed you off your medications. Was there any acknowledgement by anyone that, wow, she's actually doing better off of these than on them? Did anybody acknowledge that to you at all?
No. So I kept on wanting to thank the psychiatrist whose decision it was. because I was so
Yes.
grateful. I kept on saying, you don't understand. You saved my life. You saved my life.
Yeah, and he's like,
And
"What do
he,
you mean? I just took you off of everything."
yeah, exactly. And he was like, I don't really get this. He said, I just
Yeah.
took you off them because I was going to put you on more. And then you seemed to be kind of like, okay. So I did in the book. I do then, I go and I confront the psychiatrist at the private hospital who who had
Oh.
misdiagnosed, who had basically not spotted that it was a psychotic reaction and had kept on medicating me. And I recorded the conversation as well because I was going to sue the hospital. It's a long story as to, well, it's not a long story. It's a short story as to why I could have done, but I just thought this is going to be too much hassle. But anyway, so I recorded his answer. And in the end, he said, well, he said, I just didn't really think of it. He just said it was, he said, I suppose it could have been the case, could have been that you were suffering side effects, but I didn't really think it through, kind of thing.
You know,
I
it's
was like,
interesting.
thanks a lot.
It could be. It could be. Right? Like
Yeah.
still not able to fully acknowledge like the full level of iatrogenic harm that was done. Like
Right.
just
No.
can't humble yourself enough in the field to go, I missed this and I really fucked up.
Yeah.
I know. So actually, what I did is I said, look, okay, I knew that was going to be the best I was going to get from him. And I said, okay, given that you could have made a mistake, can you write a letter to my children who didn't have their mother for a year to say
Oh
that
my
you
God.
could have made a mistake and that you're sorry? Could you do that? And so he wrote a letter which was not particularly,
Sort of. Oh,
I think probably was not entirely what I had hoped for.
right. I'm shocked that he did. Do you know, I still go back to there's another question everybody missed, and that was about your own father. I know we ask questions like, is there a history of depression? Is there a history of whatever? But
Yeah,
nobody asks, like, do you know if
deserved.
they're on medication and how that went for them?
No,
Right?
nobody
So,
does. And you see,
no.
this is fascinating as well, because as well, part of their sort of the not evidence, but part of their, when they do that whole questionnaire when you're admitted and so on and so forth, it's kind of like, is there any history of mental illness in the family? So of course it was catnip for them. Like, oh, your father took his life,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Of
that was
course.
weaponized against you too, in
Yes,
some
it
ways.
was. But actually, so
Yeah.
looking back as well, so this was actually the big discovery that I made in my book. So I had this genetic test, which lots of people can, which basically says that I can't tolerate that type
Metabolize,
of medication,
SSRIs, yeah.
right? It came back, I've
Mhm.
got a genetic polymorph or whatever. I'm not a scientist, don't really quite understand it. But anyway, immediately I was like, my God, my father was the mirror image of me when I was medicated. And so then I did some, I found out that he was medicated. He was on antidepressants as well. Wouldn't have been SSRIs. Doesn't matter. You still can have have that reaction as well. He was a smoker. He could easily have been taking an anti-smoking drug. They work on the serotonin system.
Mhm.
And so it threw a whole new kind of dimension on how I saw my father's illness,
Yes.
which was that it may well have been iatrogenic. And so many of the people that contact me, it happens in the family. And so possibly what we think of as being, we think, oh, depression, bipolar, it runs in the family. Maybe it's not. Maybe
Mhm.
it's a medication intolerance that is running through the
Yes, that
family.
runs through the family.
Yeah, that is being
Yes.
completely overlooked.
Right.
What I think is fascinating about this, and I don't want to. I'm saying this because this is the first thing I thought of when you were talking about looking in the mirror and being in that space of like, here's my daughter's age, here's the age I was when my father ended his life. Your dad ended his life, but it saved yours.
Yes. Yeah, it did. It did. It really did. And,
Mm.
I mean, I really do believe that Grace stepped in that
Yeah.
day. What are the chances of going to a hospital and then saying, oh, yeah, we'll just take you off all the drugs? When does that happen?
Right.
Not often.
Never. Never.
And then to be able to know a med wash and then a stack was going to come, but then for them to go, oh, we'll just not add more right now because you're doing better. That's pretty rare too. Like, I think there's a little miracle right there as well, because
Yeah,
there's
there
a
was
couple
a
different.
miracle. I mean, they did add
Yeah.
the venlafaxine, but it was on a very low dose, and
Yeah.
it was fine. But yes, it was so odd as well that that my daughter was 12. She was 12,
Gosh.
in identical age that I was when I lost my dad. Then of
Mhm.
course, as a child, you can't help but make it about you. You can't do anything other than internalize it and just go, I just wasn't good enough. I wasn't lovable enough. Otherwise,
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
That's pretty profound. And you don't have to answer this question, but
Mm.
have you helped your daughter make this connection now? Does she understand it now? Do your children understand the genetic piece of all of this so that they never take anything like this? Do they get that?
Oh, well, I mean, so part of my reason for wanting to write the book was, and to do the investigations, was because I just was determined that they would know that it was the drugs and that it wasn't me, that there wasn't a possibility that one moment I could just go crazy, stab myself with a knife, and end up in a mental hospital again. So that was my driving force as well, because I was so angry that there was this narrative that I was depressed and I'd gone mad, etc., etc. I just was affronted by that. But more importantly, it was for the children, that they would know that. And we all went on that investigation together. They were, I guess, 12 and 13. I remember us, sleeping in this big bed and reading all this stuff together. They were fascinated by it. So they read the book. Lily found it very difficult, the bit when I said I was going to end my life. She found that very, very hard.
Oh,
She
yeah.
told me that. But they 100% know about medication and the dangers of, and they 100% know about how we make these diagnoses, and how many of their friends are taking ADHD drugs or on antidepressants, all these things. My kids, they know all of that. They would not, they just don't buy into it. They would never buy into it, and they would never, ever, 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 ever take a psychiatric drug. Not just because they understand that it's genetic,
Mhm.
but also because they saw what happened to me, and also because they know they've read my book.
Yeah.
They have
they're
an
in the
autographed
book.
copy, I would
They're
imagine.
in the book
Yes.
as well.
They're in it, yes.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like for our listeners to know or understand?
What do you think your listeners need to know?
Hmm. I like how you just turned that back right around on me.
She
Thank you
just
so much.
psychologized us right now. She just did the whole therapist thing where you answer a question with a question to two therapists. So, all right.
How do you
Hats off to you.
establish a sense of self and autonomy within a system that makes you reliant on other people's viewpoints only?
Whoa.
Hell yeah. Take that
Where
one,
did that one
Katinka.
come from?
It's early and I haven't even finished my coffee yet, so
Oh
there
my
you go.
God.
Wow, Terry. Damn. Okay.
How do people listen to themselves? Because it
Yep.
sounds like you listened again to your intuition, like you were still inside of you
Yeah, the whole time. This is
listening the
wrong.
whole
This is
time.
wrong. I know the
How
problem. I
Yes.
know the
So how do
problem.
people tap into
Yeah.
that or know that that is right even when they're feeling like it's wrong or they're being told that it's wrong?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are the experts on our lives, aren't we?
Mhm.
And it's so easy to actually want to outsource that kind of thing. And I suppose there was a bit of me all those years back that kind of wanted to outsource it. Oh God, somebody else's problem, or I'll take a sleeping tablet or whatever. We're the experts on our lives, and we're also incredibly resilient. And of course, feelings are information, aren't they? So suppressing feelings isn't a very wise. It's not a great idea, really, because
Mhm.
if I think back to those, sleepless nights, what was it telling me? I needed to deal with things, didn't I? The status quo was not going to be as it was. I needed to take action. I needed to work something out. I needed to get into exploring something else. Change was happening. I needed to get into the driving seat of my, the driving seat and steer somewhere else. That
Yeah.
all of these things are really important. So actually suppressing your feelings is, they are our GPS, I guess. We need all of that. We need our feelings always.
So
So
don't work so hard to get rid of our
so
feelings
don't
because
work
they're the
so hard to
GPS.
get
Yeah.
rid of them. And if you're going to get
Mhm.
rid of them, do it in a way that is fun, like, taking recreational drugs or drinking or eating chocolate or whatever, because that is so much more fun than taking a
True.
prescription drug that actually doesn't even feel good, does it? It just doesn't
No, it
even
doesn't.
feel
It just
good.
creates dependence.
Of
That's
course,
it. It doesn't even feel good. Mhm.
yeah. I mean, I don't know that many people that just go, oh, I took an antidepressant, I just felt marvelous. I know there are some people. There are some people for whom that happens, and then
I would
further
argue that
down the
they're
line,
manic, but anyway.
let's see how easy it is going to be to get off them or whatever. But
Right.
I would say, if you want to numb your feelings, just have a really good time with it.
I think that
Sorry,
is a really good advice. No, that is really good advice because you know what? If you want to numb your feelings tonight, just do it. Have fun. Tomorrow is a brand new day, and you might not need to do that again. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like that. I'm gonna, yeah, I kind of like that. All right, all right. So I have a statement to read real quick. Thank you for being on the show, Katinka. So we really appreciated you here. If you're a listener and you've been harmed by SSRI or SNRI withdrawal, your story matters a lot. We're calling on you to submit your experiences. When I say withdrawal, I mean even report if you miss a dose or two, what happens to you. We're calling on you to submit your experience to the FDA's MedWatch system. Let's make it impossible for them to ignore us. Join us in submitting your story at antidepressantinfo.org. And if you've hung out with us this long, you've been listening to the Gaslit Truth Podcast, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the things, hit the bells, and send us your Gaslit Truth stories at the Gaslit Truth Podcast at gmail.com.
And make sure that you guys go out and get a copy of Katinka's book,
Oh,
The
yes.
Pill That Steals Lives, and check
Yes.
out her nonprofit as well. Oh, look at that. There
Oh,
it
there
is,
it is.
guys. There's the book. If you're watching us on
Just to
YouTube.
warn you, it's going into reprint, so you may have to wait for a couple of weeks to get
Okay.
the thing. But anyway.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
Thanks so much for being
Thanks,
here, Katinka. Mhm.
Thank you very much indeed. What a lovely chat this has been.
Yes.